Karen poured glue in our door lock, then got stuck herself. Part 1. My name is Jordan Miles. I'm a 36-year-old software engineer, a black man and a proud first-time homeowner. Just 2 weeks before it happened, my wife Tamika and I moved into our new house on Birchfield Lane, a quiet, winding street in a suburban neighborhood outside Denver. The kind of place with Halloween flags, year-round, unspoken lawn mowing schedules, and more HOA rules than you'd believe. We thought we'd found peace, but what we didn't know was that Karen came with the property line. Her name was Karen Ashford, mid-50s, blonde bob cut, always in pastel windbreakers. She lived across the street and 3 doors down. We hadn't even unpacked half our boxes when she showed up on our driveway with a clipboard. "Hello," she said curtly. "I'm not on the HOA board officially, but I've been here 23 years. I'm just making sure you're aware of our neighborhood expectations." Before we could answer, she launched into a list: no overnight cars on the street, no decorations, not seasonally appropriate, no loud music past 8:00 p.m., and we don't allow subletting. I blinked. "We're not subletting. This is our house." Karen gave a tight smile. "Of course, just making sure. You know, renters bring a different kind of energy." She didn't need to say it. We knew exactly what she meant. We tried to ignore her. We mowed our lawn. We took in our trash bins on time. We waved at every neighbor. We even brought cookies to a few nearby homes but Karen. She watched us from behind her curtains through her front window, her head always tilted, like she was waiting to catch us doing something wrong. It was subtle until it wasn't. It happened on a cold Wednesday morning. Tamika had already left for work. I was working remotely, still in sweats, drinking coffee at the kitchen table, when I heard a rustling at the front door. Not a knock. More like a scraping. I checked the Ring camera feed on my phone, and what I saw made me freeze. Karen was at our front door, hunched over like a burglar in broad daylight. One hand held a tube of glue. The other held a key-shaped tool she was jamming into our front door lock. She was glancing around nervously, wearing gloves. Trying to clog our lock, I hit record. Then Karma stepped in as Karen pressed the glue tube against the keyhole. Something slipped. She jerked her hand and the glue splattered all over her palm and fingers. Startled, she dropped the tube right under her own shoe. She scrambled to pick it up, and in the chaos got her left hand completely stuck to our brass doorknob. You could actually see her tug once, twice, and then the panic kicked in. She looked around wildly, but she didn't know something else. Our neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, was walking her dog across the street, and she saw everything. Karen misses. Alvarez called, "What on earth are you doing?" Karen froze, her hand still glued to the doorknob. "Oh, hey, hi, Francis," Karen stammered. I saw something suspicious and was trying to check the lock. It looked tampered with." Mrs. Alvarez narrowed her eyes from the outside. "With glue, I thought maybe someone had tried to break in. I was just helping." I opened the door. "Well, tried to." It didn't move. I leaned into the Ring camera mic and said, "Ma'am, could you kindly explain why your hand is currently glued to my house?" Karen jumped like she'd been struck. Then she looked directly at the camera. For a brief second, everything dropped from her face. The smugness, the excuses. What was left was fear. The police arrived 6 minutes later. I didn't even have to call them. Mrs. Alvarez already had. When they showed up, Karen tried the same story. "I was protecting the neighborhood." She said, "I thought it was a lock-picking attempt from the renters." The officer cut her off. "They're not renters, ma'am. The deed is in their name." Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The officer looked at me. "You want to press charges?" I stared at Karen, still glued to my doorknob. Tears welling up now as neighbors began stepping out, recording on their phones. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just said yes. "I'd like to file for destruction of property, attempted vandalism, and harassment." That was just the beginning. The videos went online within the hour. Not just the Ring footage, but angles from Mrs. Alvarez and 2 other neighbors who caught the commotion. Someone added slow-motion effects. Another put dramatic music behind it. By lunchtime, Gluegate was trending in Denver. By dinner, the entire country had opinions. Part 2. By 9:43 a.m. The Ring video had already been downloaded, clipped, and stitched into multiple TikToks. By noon, one of them hit 7 million views. By 3 p.m., I was on the phone with a CNN producer. and Karen was nowhere to be found. The internet responds. The internet has a funny way of taking justice into its own hands. The top comments under the viral post read like an online courtroom. She really glued herself into getting charged. The universe said nope in real time. You mess with the lock, you get stuck. Imagine committing a hate crime and leaving your hand as evidence. Some called her bold, most called her stupid, but a significant number called her exactly what she was: dangerous. This wasn't about glue anymore. This was about control, about how people like Karen use fear, suspicion, and phony neighborhood concern as weapons. And for once it backfired publicly. National spotlight. By the next day, the story had hit national headlines. NBC: Colorado woman caught gluing neighbor's lock stuck at scene. BuzzFeed: Karen gets instant karma in most satisfying video of the week. The Root Black homeowner stands tall as HOA. Karen glues herself into infamy. I declined most interviews, but Renee agreed to speak on a local radio show. We didn't ask for this attention. She said we just wanted to move into a neighborhood and live in peace. But if this moment helps expose the quiet ways people of color are harassed where they live, then maybe it was meant to happen. That clip was shared 4-5 million times. Neighbors, speak up. Then came the other stories. Mrs. Alvarez posted a long message on Facebook describing years of Karen's subtle intimidation, reporting kids for riding scooters too fast, knocking on doors if someone's Christmas lights stayed up too long, and sending anonymous notes about too many cars in the driveway. Another neighbor wrote, Karen once told me I shouldn't let my black friend house sit because it might attract attention. I thought she was joking. I wish I had said something. A young Latino couple posted screenshots of Karen's complaint to the HOA about their frequent guests when they had family visiting. No one had spoken up before, but now that Karen was exposed, the silence shattered Karen's defense. On day 3, Karen released a statement through a lawyer. It read, "My client was deeply concerned about a pattern of unfamiliar vehicles and what she believed to be illegal activity. She acted in what she perceived as the best interest of the community. The current media firestorm is disproportionate and damaging." It was cold, clinical, void of remorse. Worse, it still didn't acknowledge race. She portrayed herself as a victim of online bullying and cancel culture. But that only made things worse. Screenshots surfaced of next-door posts where Karen had previously complained about loud urban music. Too many renters lately, and once referred to a black delivery driver as a suspicious loiterer. Every post now looked like evidence, and the court of public opinion was in session. Professional fallout. That Friday, Karen was terminated from her job. The company, a real estate firm called Havenmark, released a one-sentence press release. "We do not tolerate harassment or acts of vandalism, regardless of intention." Her LinkedIn profile disappeared the next day. Someone from Reddit discovered she'd also been a guest speaker at a local college's housing ethics seminar the year prior. That clip, pulled from the school site, re-uploaded with the title "Karen Teaches Ethics," then gets glued to a felony local reaction. In Maple Ridge, things changed quickly. People who had once nodded politely at Karen now crossed the street when they saw her. One neighbor, Rick, the guy with the Marine flag, put up a new banner on his porch that read, "This neighborhood isn't yours to police." The HOA issued a rare statement distancing themselves. "While Ms. Ashford has no formal authority in our organization, we denounce her actions and reaffirm that Maple Ridge values all homeowners equally." Tamika and I received a handwritten note taped to our mailbox. "We're sorry we stayed quiet before. Thank you for standing tall. We see you." For the first time in weeks, I felt the air shift, not fully healed, but different legal consequences. The police filed charges: vandalism, destruction of property, attempted trespassing. She was served with a notice of civil action by our lawyer. We sought damages for lock replacement, emotional distress, and legal fees. Karen's team tried to settle quietly, but we refused. We want this public. Renee said because it started in public, it's time these patterns stop hiding behind fences and friendly smiles. The unexpected letter. One morning, a week after her lawyer's statement, a small envelope arrived in our mailbox. No return address. Inside was a folded note. In shaky handwriting it read, "I don't know who I became. I thought I was protecting something, but I was only feeding my fear. I still don't expect forgiveness, but I want to understand how I got here. I see it now. I truly see it. It wasn't signed, but we knew. It didn't fix anything, but it cracked something open. Part 3. The world didn't just turn against Karen Ashford. It turned on her. What started as a video went far beyond 15 seconds of humiliation. It became a reckoning. And Karen, she wasn't ready for it. Shunned in her own street, Maple Ridge had always been quiet, politely judgmental at worst, suburban passive-aggressive at best. But after the footage spread, silence turned to isolation. Karen became a ghost in her own neighborhood. People she'd known for years looked through her. She went to the grocery store. A cashier switched lanes, tried to walk her dog. A neighbor crossed to the other side of the street. Kids whispered when she passed. One even shouted, "Don't touch our mailbox, Karen." The HOA formally barred her from any community committee for a minimum of 5 years. Her lawn grew patchy. Her mailbox leaned unfixed. Her curtains stayed shut. The job interviews, after Havenmark dropped her, Karen tried to rebuild. She updated her resume, applied to smaller firms, sent emails to old contacts. No one responded. One friend from her church group messaged her back, I don't feel comfortable endorsing you right now. It's too public." A week later, her LinkedIn account was locked for suspected impersonation. Her name had become a tag for vandalism. No company wanted her. Even temp agencies passed the lawsuit. The civil case moved forward. Jordan and Tamika stood firm. Their lawyer, a fierce black woman named Camille, refused to settle under the table. "We're not here for revenge," she said. "We're here for precedent." Karen tried to fight it. Her new attorney argued that she was under emotional duress, acted out of concern, and never intended real harm. But the court saw the video, heard the witnesses, heard Mrs. Alvarez's testimony, and ruled guilty of property destruction, guilty of harassment, ordered to pay $18,500 and $500 in damages, plus 100 hours of court-mandated community service. Karen didn't cry in court, but her hands shook when she signed the check. The breakdown. 2 days after the ruling, Karen disappeared. Not literally, she still lived on Birchfield Lane, but she stopped going outside, didn't walk the dog, didn't answer the door, didn't collect her mail for 3 days. On day 4, a neighbor called the non-emergency line for a wellness check. Officers knocked, waited, knocked again. Finally, Karen opened the door a crack. She looked thinner, eyes puffy, still in the same sweater she'd worn all week. "I'm fine," she said. Then she shut the door. Community shifts. Meanwhile, the rest of Maple Ridge shifted, inspired by what happened. A group of residents led by Tamika started a community forum called Our Block Voices. They held monthly meetups on front lawns, discussed racial bias, policing equity in schools. People brought chairs, homemade snacks, and their stories. A Vietnamese couple shared how Karen had once filed noise complaints because they hosted Lunar New Year dinners. A teenager admitted he'd never seen a black homeowner until the Lanes moved in. What had once been shame became conversation. What had once been whispered became shared truth, national recognition. The local paper ran a story titled, "From Surveillance to Solidarity," how one couple sparked change on Birchfield Lane. Jordan and Tamika were invited to speak at a university panel, Bias in the Suburbs, How Quiet Racism Finds Its Voice. At the event, Tamika said, "What happened to us wasn't isolated. It was a thread in a much bigger fabric. But sometimes pulling that thread can unravel a whole history and give people the chance to weave something better." The audience gave them a standing ovation. Karen's name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew. The letter weeks after the lawsuit, a letter arrived. Not from a lawyer, from Karen. It was handwritten, "Meet Jordan and Tamika. I know I am the last person you want to hear from, but I have to write this not to defend myself and not to beg for your grace. I acted out of fear, of change, of difference, and I let that fear justify cruelty. I thought I was maintaining standards when really I was just upholding walls. Walls that have existed in me for longer than I want to admit. The silence has forced me to listen. The fallout has forced me to look. And now I want to learn how to live without hate, without control, without that old voice in my head. I'm sorry. Truly, Karen Ashford." Jordan read it twice. Tamika folded it carefully and said, "She's finally talking to herself. That's where real change begins. End of a season, fall crept in, leaves changed, driveways cooled. Karen began attending her mandated community service at a local youth center. She didn't announce it, didn't post about it. She showed up early, left quietly, stacked chairs, sorted supplies, swept the floor. And every once in a while, someone recognized her, some pointed, some whispered, but she didn't flinch, she stayed. Part 4. Karen Ashford never thought she'd be sweeping a youth center gym floor at 6:45 a.m., wearing a worn-out volunteer shirt with her name tag clipped askew. She never thought she'd feel grateful to be invisible. But here she was. No clipboard, no HOA jacket, no title to wield, just a middle-aged woman court-ordered to show up and slowly beginning to realize she had more to fix than just a lock. The first time she listened, the kids didn't know who she was. Not at first, they called her Miss K, barely looking up from their phones. She organized their snack table, cleaned paintbrushes, folded chairs, tried not to interrupt. But then one afternoon, she heard something that stopped her cold. A 13-year-old boy named Malik stood in the middle of the room holding a drawing of a house. "It's not real," he said, his voice flat. "This is the house I want someday, where the cops don't come just 'cause of how we look, where the neighbors don't clutch their purse when we walk by." Karen froze. She looked down at the carpet. She had clutched her purse like that once. Maybe more than once. She didn't say anything that day, but she wrote about it in her court journal that night, I think. "I've done more damage than I let myself believe. And the worst part, I was proud of it. I thought I was right." The second time she broke, week 3. A teen girl named Amari asked the group, "Have you ever been somewhere and felt like no one wanted you there?" Several kids nodded. Karen's hand went to her throat. That had been her house, her sidewalk, her front lawn. She didn't have to yell at people to make them feel unwelcome. She just had to stare long enough, cross her arms, pretend to be concerned. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat on her porch with a blanket staring at her rusted mailbox, remembering every anonymous complaint letter she'd written. Her hands trembled. Not from cold, from clarity. Tanya Davis, the youth center director, was the first person who didn't sugarcoat anything. One afternoon, as Karen restocked the supply shelves, Tanya approached. "You don't talk much." Karen looked up. "I'm trying to listen more than I speak." Tanya nodded. "Good, but just so we're clear, I know who you are." Karen's face flushed. "Of course I also know who you were," Tanya said. "But the question is, who are you going to be now?" Karen didn't answer. Not yet. The apology circle. Every 6 weeks, the center held something called an apology circle, a place where youth could say sorry for things they'd done or call out harm they'd experienced. It wasn't mandatory, but it was powerful. Karen didn't plan to speak. But when Malik, the boy with the drawing, stood up and said, "I'm tired of being blamed for existing," something cracked. Karen stood up. Slow, careful. The room hushed. "I used to be part of the reason you felt that," she said, voice thin. "I told myself I was protecting my community, but really I was protecting a version of it where people like me stayed in control." Some kids looked confused. Others nodded silently. "I glued a neighbor's door shut," she continued, "because I believed they didn't belong. And I believed it because I never questioned where that belief came from." Tanya didn't interrupt. Karen looked down, then added, "I am sorry. I can't undo it, but I'm here, and I'm learning slowly." She sat down, and for the first time, no one looked away. A phone call that night, she dialed a number. She'd been too ashamed to call her niece Latasha, whom she hadn't spoken to in 6 years after a heated Thanksgiving, where Karen made an ignorant comment about urban names. "Hello," Latasha answered. There was a long silence. Then Karen said, "I was wrong." Latasha didn't respond immediately. Then softly, "What made you say that?" Now Karen's voice cracked, "Because I finally stopped listening to myself and started listening to the people I used to judge." Another pause. Then Latasha whispered, "I've been waiting a long time to hear that quiet change." Karen kept volunteering long after her mandated hours ended. She repainted the storage closet, wrote grants for new sports equipment, sat in the back of poetry nights and clapped until her hands hurt. She never asked for credit, never gave a speech, but her presence became familiar, consistent, and that consistency began to shift something in her and around her. A letter revisited. In early December, she printed out a new copy of the letter she had sent to the Lanes. She added a new line at the bottom. I now understand that apologies are only the beginning. It's the work we do after that defines who we really are. She signed it again, this time with her full name, and slid it under their door. Part 5. Winter came quietly, snow blanketed the roof lines of Maple Ridge. Footsteps softened. Lights flickered warmly behind windows, but there was still a chill in the air that had nothing to do with the weather. Some neighbors waved again. Others hadn't forgotten. Forgiveness, Karen had learned, wasn't a ribbon. It was a shovel. You had to dig for it. The broken lock won. Icy morning in January, Karen stood across the street from Jordan and Tamika's house. She stared at the front door she had once glued shut. A scar still marked the brass around the keyhole, faint but there. She walked up the sidewalk with a small toolkit and a note in her coat pocket. Her heart pounded as she knocked. Jordan opened it slowly. No camera this time, just eyes. She didn't say hello. She said, I'd like to repair what I broke with your permission. I don't expect anything in return. Jordan studied her, then nodded once and stepped aside. She knelt, unzipped the bag, and got to work. The fix. The new lock clicked into place with a satisfying snap. Karen didn't rush it. She checked the alignment 3 times, made sure the finish matched the original. Tamika came out midway, holding a mug of tea. Good choice, she said, eyeing the brushed bronze clean strong. Karen didn't look up. I researched your original model. It's a little more secure than what you had before. Tamika didn't smile, but she didn't leave either. When the job was done, Karen stood and placed a folded envelope on the porch. Then she turned to go. Jordan called after her. Karen, she froze. He stepped forward. Come back tonight. The gathering that night, the Lanes hosted a neighborhood potluck. No press, no microphones, just neighbors. Warm food, folding chairs in the living room. Karen almost didn't come. She stood on her porch for 10 minutes holding a tray of homemade cornbread, unsure if anyone wanted to see her. But when she walked in, the first person who greeted her was Mrs. Alvarez. You're here, she said simply. Karen nodded. I brought something. Alvarez took the tray, then come sit. She led Karen to a spot near the fireplace. A circle of fire later, as candles flickered low and plates emptied. Tamika stood and tapped her glass. Before we go, she said, there's something I want to say. Everyone quieted. A year ago, we moved here for peace. But what we found was a lesson in discomfort, in boundaries and harm. She glanced at Karen, and in redemption, Karen looked down. Tamika continued, this community can't change history, but we can choose what comes next. She raised her glass to opening doors. Everyone lifted theirs, even Karen. The hardest words after. Most people left. Karen approached Jordan and Tamika. She stood in the doorway, the same place she had once caused so much pain. There are a lot of things I can't undo, she said, but I want you to know I've been doing the work, not just the hours, the reflection, the reckoning. And if you ever need a volunteer for anything, I'm here. Jordan extended his hand. Karen blinked. Tamika added, this time we opened the door. Karen took his hand. And something let go inside her. Guilt, shame, fear replaced by something steadier. It wasn't approval, it was truth. 1 year later, Karen still lives on Birchfield Lane. She's not on any committees. She still bakes too many cookies and mows her lawn a little too early. But she also organizes coat drives, writes welcome notes to new families, shows up to every our block. Voices meeting and sits in the back to listen. Her house is quieter, but her heart isn't. A final note. That spring, a new family moved into the corner lot. A single mother and her teenage daughter, Karen, walked up to their porch with a card and a toolkit. Welcome, she said. They smiled nervously. She added, I don't assume anything anymore. I just offer help if you need it. The mother hesitated, then nodded and invited her in. Forgiveness is never owed. Trust isn't gifted. Redemption doesn't erase the past, but it builds new ground beneath your feet. Karen broke a lock, but she learned to open doors, not for herself, for the people she once shut out, and this time she walked through with her hands open. The end. Suri Kwan Sentun.